Welcome back to the Beehive. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we're going to take you back through a 100-year history of the Speedway motorcycle engine. And first we're going to start off with the JAP. Do you remember the JAP? The JAP was John Alfred Prestwich. And he was the creator of the JAP. John Alfred Prestwich, JAP. And it was in Tottenham, England. And he started making these engines in the mid-1920s. And he built some nice engines and they started to take off. And he bought a church next to his house in Tottenham. And he started a factory. And he started mass producing these JAP engines. In the late 1920s, around 1928, John Alfred started producing these JAPs and they start selling like gangbusters. You may ask yourself, how in the world did they get the name Jawa? That's a strange name. Well, the J is from his last name, Generic, and there was a motorcycle called Wonderot. And so he used the first two letters of his last name, J-A, and then Wonderot, W-A, he combined that. So J-A, W-A combined, and that made Jawa. In 1934, Jawa made this 250 Special. It was a street motorcycle, 249 cc's. And it had a 4-speed. It was just a street bike. Although Jawa was making street bikes, they were not really entering into the world of Speedway. The world of Speedway was dominated by the JAPs. The JAPs completely dominated Speedway for the next 40 years. We had Americans like Ernie Rocio, and all the European riders were riding the JAP. Jack Milne won the 1937 World Championship on a JAP. Also, one of the first lay-down Speedway engines was a JAP. Built by Jerry Fairchild in around 1950s. He built that lay-down JAP and he had Ernie Rocio ride that a few times. However, the upright JAPs were the hot ticket. They were the hot ticket. Ernie Rocio rode that. I rode that Speedway bike too one time and it just didn't really have quite the balance. But it was the first lay-down JAP. All the JAPs were upright and they were really good. Finally, in 1949, ESO company from Czechoslovakia, they made an ESO Speedway bike. They wanted to rival the JAP. But in 1949, they just took that JAP engine and they put it in the ESO motorcycle. Finally, in 1950, a year later, ESO, which means ace in Czechoslovakia, the term ESO means ace, they went ahead and created their own Speedway engine. It was a 2-valve Speedway bike, and it was their own style. It was going to be the future Jawa Speedway bike, but it was ESO. ESO was also making like street bikes and dirt bikes, 250, 350, and 500 cc. They were doing all kinds of motorcycle sports. ESO's main goal was to defeat the JAPs, to put them out of business. But 1964 was the year that JAPs went out of business. Also, it was a year that ESO went out of business. They sold to Jawa, and that was Jawa's good luck. They bought the engine from ESO, the design, that original 2-valve Speedway bike, they bought that from ESO, and now all the rights to the Speedway was Jawa. JAP was gone, and ESO was gone, and all that was left was the Jawa. Now, Jawa was no stranger to motorsports. They had been building motorcycles, dirt bikes, and street bikes for many years. Jawa was in business for all those years. However, this was their good luck with Speedway. They decided now they're going to go ahead and dominate the world of Speedway. which they did. If you raced Speedway in the late 60s, early 70s, the mid 70s, the Jawa 2-valve with a magneto and the gear drive, that was the hot ticket. It was dominating the world of Speedway, and the JP was pretty much out at that time. It's kind of weird to say this, but I was the last Division I JAP handicap scratch main event winners on the JAP. I was riding that JAP and Jerry Fairchild was tuning it. And he said, Brian, I want you to beat those Jawas. And on that JAP with Jerry Fairchild, it went really fast. And then came Harry Westlake, the Westlake Speedway engine. It came along and it was a 4-valve and it was fast. And then all of a sudden these Jawas, these really good 2-valve Jawas were obsolete, and the hot ticket was the 4-valve Westlake. Suddenly Jawa was in a dilemma. They saw that 4-valve taking them down. So Jawa designed their own 4-valve Jawa, and it was pretty hot ticket. A lot of the European riders were riding that 4-valve, and then also the Westlake. A lot of Speedway riders were riding that Westlake. Bruce Penhall, he won 2 world championships. He was a factory Westlake rider. Jawa was riding those 4-valves now. Now it was a 4-valve Speedway world. Harry Westlake, he was the heart and the soul of the Westlake engines. He did everything. He was a genius. And then he was kind of elderly, and then he passed away after a world championship at the party. And when he passed away, the Westlakes, only a couple years later, there was no more Westlake. It completely went out of business. Jawa ran into a string of good luck. They got that engine from ESO and they copied it, designed that 2-valve Speedway bike. Now Harry Westlake passed away and they stopped producing the Westlake Speedway engines, the 4-valve. Now Jawa completely dominated and owned the Speedway market once again. Jawa did branch off and they created another Speedway engine called the GM. The GM is just a fast motorcycle. It's a good engine. Maybe not as reliable as the Jawa, but the thing is fast on the long tracks. A lot of the riders are riding the GMs and the Jawas now. So all the Jawas and the GMs are made now in the Czech Republic. The Czech Republic. 40 years the JP dominated the world of Speedway. And then the ESO came along, and then Jawa bought the ESO, and then Westlake came along with Harry, and they went ahead and competed with that 4-valve, and then the Jawa met the 4-valve with Harry. Harry passed away, and the Jawa dominates the world of Speedway now with the GM. That's it, 100 years of Speedway engines in just a nutshell. And it's a really exciting 100 years, and there's some really good Speedway. All those engines were fantastic too. They all kind of like competed and helped each other grow. The world of Speedway is much better with the competition. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today in the 100 years of Speedway. We appreciate you. We appreciate you watching the show, and we're going to see you next time.